Hi, the video that you're about to watch is the recording of a live webinar that I did a few days ago where I documented 10 life lessons and 10 business lessons that I've learned through being through a very stressful, high growth, highly acquisitive 48 deals in 3 years business. And about halfway through, I talk about the revival of my business acquisition fast track program. I haven't done this one for a while, but I'm bringing it back this summer. And people always comment, can I still get the bonuses that I described on the webinar, even though you're watching the recording? And the answer is yes, you can. So everything that you see and hear on the webinar, you too can have. And you go to the dealmakersacademy.com/fast if you'd like to register for that. So enjoy this webinar, and I hope to see you on the fast track. Okay, so good morning, everyone. This is the official start. Good morning to you all. Today, we are talking about 10 hard lessons learned from doing 48 acquisitions through to exit. And I want to share with you the hard stuff as well as the good stuff, because I think sometimes you learn more from mistakes or the way things should have been done differently, the benefit of hindsight, than you do just from someone saying, oh, this is wonderful and that's wonderful and it's all incredibly wonderful and it's all just going to be wonderful. I think you need to know that there are two sides to absolutely everything. And always I've been realistic in my training, because I always think that, and those of you on my who've been on my fast track program or my mastermind program, you know that I give a very, very balanced view of everything. And I want to share some ideas with you that I've learned over the last 3 years of being part of a very, very fast, high growth buy and build program. And also some things that I've learned along the way, because I know not everyone on this webinar today knows me. It did feel, when I was saying hello to people, I did know just about everyone, but that's clearly not really the case. So there's going to be people who are here for the very first time, don't know anything about me. So I'll give you a little bit of background, but try and make it as entertaining and as educational as possible as well. Oh, yes. And this was all done, by the way, in 37 months. In fact, the acquisitions were done in 2.5 years, and then we just focused on consolidation from January onwards. And if you saw my LinkedIn posts or my emails, yeah, it's been quite a journey. And I don't really ever share much personal stuff with anyone really. Yeah, I've been talking to some people and they said, you know what? Why don't you share the sort of the behind the scenes and share the sort of the trials and tribulations as well? So that's probably why I'm slightly tense today, because I'm out of my comfort zone this morning, and usually I stay very firmly in my comfort zone. So anyway, so on the webinar today, I'm going to be telling you what I learned along the way. 10 lessons learned from a very, very aggressive buy and build strategy. I think I can fairly confidently say not many businesses in my sector grew with that. There's a couple now that are just private equity backed, that's just going like crazy and very, very successfully. Yeah, not many people have done this in the way that we've done it. So I can share some stories around that. And also, I guess if there's a message on the webinar today, it's about and making sure that you get your priorities right, and avoiding some of the mistakes that I made. No one's perfect. We're all human. We make mistakes along the way. And sometimes you actually have to make the same mistake several times before you realize it's a mistake. And I'm wonderful at it. I make a mistake on average 3 times before I realize, haven't learned the lesson. I want to give you some useful tips to make sure that you are on the right track, and how to keep going when others want you to fail. The bizarre thing, I don't know whether this is like a UK thing or it's around the world, there's always some people who want you to fail. They just love the idea that someone comes a cropper or trips up on something or makes a mistake. And those of you who sort of who follow me on LinkedIn, there are particular people who seem to relish everything that could ever be perceived as negative. and usually it's just their rather warped perception. And also, I'm going to tell you later on, after I've done the content part, the part that you're here for, about the revival, the back from the dead, the revival of my fast track program. And I got Maria in the office to count up how many people have been on this in the last 2 years. It's over 2,500 people have been on my fast track program. I had no idea. 2,500 people have been on this very, very popular training program, How to Buy a Business. I've revived it for the next over the next few weeks, and reduced the price and made it more accessible. So I'll tell you about that. I know you're not here for that, but so you can leave after the content part. I'll tell you when that finishes. And those of you who think, well, actually, this could be kind of fun to do, I'd like to learn more from Jonathan, then stay on the webinar, and I'll tell you about that at the end. So here are some things that you need to know about me. It's not all about me, don't worry, because I've tried to extract some lessons from each of these key relevant points in my life. I'm actually a university dropout. Yes, I dropped out of university at 19. I probably sort of mentally left after the first term and physically left after the second term. And actually, I was the first person in my family to go to university. So with the benefit of hindsight, I can imagine how sort of disappointed my parents must have been, but also at the same time, they maybe showed it temporarily, but it certainly was never rubbed in my face. They were in fact remarkably supportive, because I wanted to leave university to start a business. Absolutely crazy. They always were in business themselves, but probably more in the self-employed category rather than sort of a business employing people, and they knew how hard it was, and advised me against it. To be fair, I'm quite glad that I didn't listen entirely to that advice, but I didn't have a clear plan. And something that's going to come out as a theme of the webinar today is about having a focus and a plan, because you'll get there a lot faster if you know where you're going. And with the benefit of hindsight, looking back, I wish I'd finished my degree. You know what? Yeah, another 2.5 years wouldn't have made any difference. And you also build those relationships during university that do last a lifetime. And I sometimes wish that I'd had those relationships from back in my in that period of my life. So yeah, so you can't be an entrepreneur these days without dropping out of university. So I did it before it was fashionable. And then in 1999, I sold a publishing business, a magazine publishing business. And it completely changed my view of business for forever, in fact. And it was a small business, couple of employees, been running it for about 2.5 years. But the day I sold it, I made more money on that day than I'd made in the previous 2.5 years combined, which was pretty eye-opening, really. I mean, if you think about it, you slog your guts out for 2.5 years, turning up at an office, all the ups and downs of being a small business owner when you're in your 20s, but on the day I sold it to rather strangely, really, a corporate training company, and they wanted a particular title that we published on personal development, which has always been a big area of interest for me. And I sold it on what we now call a deferred consideration model. And this is where you receive the money over a period of time. So I received a lump sum on day one, and then received the balance over a period of time. And I realized when I was putting together the slides for today that that's something actually I don't think I've ever mentioned before, because it's reasonably significant, because it's actually a really good way to buy a business, a really good way to sell a business if you want to sell a business in that way. And I realized that time does not necessarily grow value. Now, think about this. I could have worked for another 2.5 years of that business, but would it have been twice as valuable? I think the answer is no, it wouldn't have been twice as valuable. And this is a judgment call you all need to make. And if you're writing things down, probably this is the first thing to write down, is that time does not necessarily grow value. So you can work at your business to improve it next year, prove it the year. I mean, entrepreneurially minded people always believe that next year is going to be better, right? So next year is going to be better than the next year, than the next year. But it's not necessarily better, but you're so positive and so optimistic. It doesn't matter about that bad year. There'll be another good year. And a lot of businesses have been affected by Brexit and then by the pandemic and now the cost of living. It's like, how many hits are you going to take? At some point, you have to get out. I do not want you to be the person who owns a business for the next 5 years, but what you sell it for in 5 years' time is actually no more than what you would have sold it for this year. Okay, but you've wasted 5 years of your life going nowhere. If you're writing things down, that's probably the first thing to write down. Then in 2006, I bought a multi-million-pound competitor. Different business, different sector, accredited adult education, and I bought a competitor. Now, interestingly, this competitor had actually been started by people who used to work for me. It was started by a client of mine who teamed up with my right-hand man, and then they went and signed up half of my staff. I remember doing a conference call with my clients. This was pre-video sessions like this, and I did a conference call with my clients and trying to keep them on board and not jump ship to this other company. I was talking for my life. I actually remember that. I remember where I was sitting. I remember the room I was in. I remember how I was feeling. And then 5 years later, after this competitor started, I had the opportunity to buy it. And I realized then that you need a really good deal team. And it doesn't mean that you've got people employed. It just means that you've got people to go to in your little black book of contacts. So you've got the right lawyer to go to, the right accountant to go to. And I had a really good lawyer to go to. He is still my lawyer today. We were actually texting last night about something, and he gave me a very, very good piece of advice back in 2006. And that was to help me distinguish between whether to buy assets or whether to buy shares. Now, if I bought the shares, I would have had I think it's like 1.3 or 1.4 million pounds worth of issues and problems to deal with. But doing an asset purchase meant I didn't have any of that whatsoever. It was a very small piece of advice because I was just going down the share route as a sort of default, because that's what most people do. And so I did the asset purchase, and as a result, it saved me a whole world of pain. And that deal was transformational. It was a big deal. It was a big deal for me, and it was just a big deal. It was a sizable business that I was buying, and that deal was transformational to my current business. So if you're on the webinar right now and you own a business, then I would be strongly suggesting to you that you need to buy another business, because that can double up, triple up, quadruple up the size of your existing company, and you can do it between now and the end of the year. I mean, you can get started right now. You can get your deal sourcing going September, beginning of August, beginning of September, and you can be talking to business owners in September, even sooner, and you could get a deal over the line by Christmas. So, and my masterminders who are on the program today know how quickly it can happen once you get moving. Now, you've got to get moving, you've got to do stuff, but what one deal could be transformational. Now, what I really learned from that was the speed of decision making is essential. So I found out about the opportunity to buy this business on Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon, that's when I found out about it. I was in a meeting. I went to Wolverhampton to meet the owners, and I was sitting in a meeting room, actually not too dissimilar to the one that I'm sitting in right now, in a hotel. And they said, highly confidential. We want to do a deal. And this guy had messed me around before. I mean, he was a competitor, so that's the job of competitors, right? To annoy you. And I said, well, look, if you're serious, we'll do it. If you're not serious, you're just wasting my time again. So he said, yeah, we're serious. And I owned it that Friday afternoon. So so I found out about it Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, 4 days. So you've got to move fast. You've got to be able to move fast. So when people say they've been trying to buy a business for the last 18 months and they still haven't got it over the line, they're doing something wrong. They're not following a process. And then I took the business that I bought, the one I've just been talking about, combined it with the existing business, and put it together, and I sold that to private equity in 2007. A couple of lessons learned from this. I'm repeating what I said earlier. In fact, I might even repeat it again later on, because important things are worth repeating, right? Sell sooner, not later. Don't hang on. Yeah, sell sooner, not later. The business might not, in 2-3 years' time, it might not be worth any more than it is now. So you don't want, you've got to cash in your chips. You've got to take money off the table. It's like playing roulette, at some point, you've got to cash in your chips. And if you keep on playing, you could lose everything. So better to cash in your chips along the way. The technical term, or the correct term, is de-risking. You're de-risking your position. Interestingly, you can actually borrow money to de-risk your position. So you can put debt into a business, and the debt provider is happy for you to take money out. You can sell part of the business to private equity, or someone like that, in order to de-risk your position. But I would always say to people, if you've got a business right now, think about growing that business as rapidly as possible and selling it. If you're not in business yet, buy a business, fix it up, and then sell it. Don't hold on to it for years and years and years. And then get good financial advice on investing your money. I put most of mine into property, which was this was the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. There was one bad deal in there, where I lost a lot of money, and there were some very good deals. I bought for example, one property I bought for 2 million. That's now worth 4 million. I still own that. So yeah, there are, when you've got the cash, you can do some really good things. And then don't jump into something new too quickly. I jumped into the new thing way too quickly. I should have gone around the world on a cruise ship. I should have gone to all the countries that I wanted to visit, taken the time out. I didn't need to work. But I've been wired since I was 19, since dropping out of university, to work, to wake up every morning. I don't like using this word hustle. It feels such a sort of, it feels like, I feel like I'm too old to be hustling. I'm too old to be hustling, but you know what I mean? It's the, it's that sort of, I've got to be at it, got to be on it all the time, which has served me well. But I've got to say recently, it's been quite damaging in some ways. So you need holidays, you need hobbies and interests outside of work. You need to have that work-life balance that I think so many entrepreneurially minded people don't have. You've got to have it, because otherwise what's it all about? Invest in your family. We talk about investing in businesses, and I'm a big advocate of buying businesses, and I help other people buy businesses, but invest in your family. Invest in your family as well. Consider that to be a very, very good investment, and a lifelong investment as well. And don't let business define you. Look, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. And I have let business define me. So when I've had a good day, I'm walking on air, I'm smiling at strangers, all the things you don't do in London, but if you live in London, you know what I mean. You don't smile at strangers in London. I'm smiling at strangers, chatty with the postman, that sort of thing. But then a bad day, oh my goodness, it's like, why am I doing this? And you just feel that is just a terrible attitude. That has been my attitude, but it's a terrible attitude. Don't let business define you. You are separate from your business. Business is just an activity. It's not you, the person. And then a bit of a life-changing moment in February 2016, when my daughter was born. If you're trying to work it out, yes, I did start rather late. Why? Because maybe relationship suffered, because I was always putting business first. And with the benefit of hindsight, I still hadn't, despite the birth of my daughter in February, I still hadn't quite got the idea that work-life balance was a good thing. She was born at about 8 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the afternoon of the same day, I was sitting in the offices of a private equity firm trying to do a deal with them. It's embarrassing to even say it, but I clearly hadn't got my balance right at that stage. But it started to reprioritize everything. Yeah, especially when your daughter tells you, actually, I've forgotten this. I'm going to tell you this. And by the way, these are the life lessons. We'll get onto the business lessons in a minute. So if you're here for the business stuff, Don't worry, we're 3 minutes. Give me 3 minutes. We'll be on the business stuff. Okay. My daughter so this was about, I don't know when it was. It feels like it was about 3 or 4 months ago. And she's brought her spellings home from school. So she's 6 years old now. She's brought her weekly spellings home from school, and 12 words. And we're going through the spellings. I'm singing them for the first time. And one of the words is unhappy. And I said, okay. So I'm going through the words. Said unhappy, and she looked at me and she said, "That's you." I said, well, I was quite taken aback. So, oh, unhappy? Do you think so? And she said yes, and then just carried on reading through the spellings. And then the next day, I thought I'd mention it, and I said, I said, what do you think makes me unhappy? And she said, work. And wow, okay, that's a surprise. And I said, okay, so what makes me happy? And she said, me. I said, exactly, you make me happy. So you start to reprioritize everything. And I've got to say, my proudest achievement, forget business. If you've got children, you know what I mean. My absolute proudest achievement. And everything I do, I now do for her, not for me. Yeah, I've done all right. Financially, I'm okay. I'm comfortable. But now it's all about her and her future. And there's only one photo in this entire presentation. I only put it in while I was having breakfast this morning, just because I'm so proud of her. And but yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to go down an emotional road here. But I just want to show you that was taken probably about 3 months ago as well. So there you go. And then in May 16, I bought a group of companies from private equity. And this was a pretty complicated deal. For example, how can it take 3 months to negotiate a £1 deal? So right at the beginning, it was clear I was going to be buying the businesses for nothing. It was 7 companies for nothing. It's quite clear that I was going to be doing that. And that's actually what I did 3 months later. But it took 12 weeks of contracts. There were multiple shareholders. It was very, very complicated, incredibly complicated, very, very frustrating, but eventually got it over the line. And that was a group of businesses doing about 5 million in revenue in the digital marketing space. I can barely turn on my laptop, let alone know anything about digital marketing. But I owned this digital. Now I own this digital marketing business, that's sort of SEO and Facebook advertising and all of those things that are slightly beyond my technical competence. But a big learning point from this is that distressed acquisitions like this may not need money to buy them, but they sure need time. So do not think that you can buy a business and be a business in a distressed state. This was clearly in a distressed state, and think that you can be hands off. In other words, don't buy a business that's distressed and think it's passive income. It will require a lot of time and a lot of effort. And then after 6 months, because I was in what's called an anti-embarrassment clause for 6 months, I sold the restructured business 11 months. So I restructured the business after 6 months and sold it later for 1 million plus. So that was now, is that a 1 million% return on investment? I'm not sure if that's what it is, but anyway, it's a big ROI, it's a big return on investment. Now, interestingly, this restructuring where you use perfectly legal processes called liquidations and administrations, they're different names in different countries, to reorganize the assets of the business and basically to restructure the business, to get rid of the bad stuff and keep the good stuff, is perfectly legal. There's a whole industry around this. I mean, it's a huge sector in the UK. It's called this. We don't even call it distressed anymore in the UK. We call it special situations. So when someone says they're in special situations in acquisitions, it means that they're doing this sort of thing. But lessons learned from this: start the sales process the moment you buy. So if you're going to be buying a business, knowing that you're just going to reform it, restructure it, fix it up in some way, and then sell it on, then you need to be finding the buyer even before you bought it. So because you want to move fast, you can't have your head down in the business for a year and then go, oh, we need to sell it. You need to find that buyer sooner rather than later, and expect a lot of opposition. I mean, this whole restructuring process is pretty aggressive, and even today, even now, I'm getting people who, not people, one person. He's probably. I've got a LinkedIn hater. Did you know that? Probably some of you do. I've got a LinkedIn hater. He's like obsessed with me. Seriously obsessed. It feels like all he thinks about is me, which is a little bit worrying, a little bit crazy, bit of a stalker. I bet he knows where I live as well. I bet he does, which actually is quite come to think of it, it's actually quite concerning. And even today, he looks at this deal and he says this was a complete failure. No, it wasn't. This was a really successful. This was really, really successful. And yeah, my masterminders who know the ins and outs and the whole detail of it, because spent sessions talking about this in great detail. Yeah, don't quite get how anyone could ever perceive this as anything other than incredibly successful. So expect opposition when you do something like this. And it is a tough journey. Those 11 months. Yeah, it was hard work. It was hard work, but you know what? It was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. And then I don't know if you can see that because of the. Let me just see if I can move. Can I move that for you? Yeah. So yeah, in 2019, I started what's called a buy and build in a sector that I had no prior knowledge about. Now, I wouldn't actually completely recommend this. I think you should understand and know the types of businesses that you're buying. I think that's very, very important. But I found someone who really knew the sector inside out, backwards, and wonderful. In fact, one of the best people in business that I've ever known, Linda, and yeah, she's just been remarkable over the last 3 years, and she has that 30 years of experience in the knowledge of the sector. And we had a goal to be a top 10 group. That's how we start up. We're going to be a top 10. We're going to be a top 10 group, and there's like a league table in the sector published every year, and we wanted to be in the top 10. And yeah, I guess there was a bit of ego in there, but it was a goal. It was a goal to aim towards. The thing is, don't stick your head too far above the parapet, if you know that phrase, because you're going to get shot at. The parapet on a castle. If you stick your head too far, the enemy's gonna shoot at you. And I think the benefit of hindsight, I stuck my head way too high over the parapet. If you've subscribed to my YouTube channel, you'll find like a dozen videos on there where I go behind the scenes on all these acquisitions, and I meet the staff, and I'm sorting out the problems and all of these things. It seemed like a really good idea at the time. I didn't actually realize how many people would be how many feathers it would ruffle, because we've got people then who are in the sector for 10, 15, 20 years, and then there's this guy called Jonathan who comes along, has been doing it for 5 minutes, saying we're going to be a top 10 group, we're going to be number 1, we're going to be number 3, we're going to be number 6, whatever it was that week. How confident we felt that week, and I got a lot of grief. I've got a lovely anecdote that I'm going to be sharing with my people on my fast track and mastermind, the people I get to know better, about how the owner of one of those top companies in the country, in my sector, accosted me at 2:30 in the morning at the end of an industry dinner, and proceeded to shout at me, which was very unbecoming for a woman who is incredibly wealthy and very, very successful, and someone actually I admired, until she thought she'd shout at me. And she hated my videos. She hated my YouTube videos. So you just can't please all the people all the time. But don't stick your head too far above the parapet. So if I do anything like this ever again, never say never. Definitely not going to do it just now, but never say never. I don't think I'll be recording it and doing videos, because I didn't realize how many people that would upset. So 48 deals between June and December. So that was what we did. Lessons learned. Well, we created the 4th largest group in the sector, with no bank debt or borrowing. No bank debt or borrowing. So we did it entirely from cash flow. We did it entirely from our own resources inside the business. Now, would I recommend it? No. When we come on to the business lessons, I'll tell you what I recommend. In fact, actually, so I'm not going to keep going on about this. It sounds like I'm obsessed, but the troll I was talking about earlier, who by the way I'm suing for libel, but he still keeps on mouthing off, said, Jonathan's one of his videos, he said he'd be number 1, and it's like number 4 isn't enough. But anyway, can't please all the people all the time. And yeah, if you follow this constantly, people have been trying to pull me down. You've got to be Teflon. You've got to, nothing must stick. You've got to create a shield around you, a shell, a hard shell, if you like, a tough skin, whatever phrase you want to use. But you will get opposition. And successful people, or people who want to do big things, will get opposition. That is just a fact of life. And it was actually the most intense period of my life. So I exited last month, seems like a lifetime ago, and it was an MBO, which is a management buyout. And there was a particularly wealthy individual who backed this MBO and is going to be the future. He's the future investor in the business. So lessons learned: prioritize your health and your family above money. I was getting to the point where I've had a headache since January. Yeah, not 24 hours a day, but it feels like a buzz in my head, like a mild hangover. 20 years ago, I might well have had a mild hangover for 6 months, but these days, no, I don't really drink alcohol very often, but it felt like a hangover for 6 months. I had stomach pains that were so intense between Christmas and New Year that I mean, when I say intense, I mean I was holding my stomach doubled over in pain and sort of like yelping, calling, just the pain was just terrible. And I went to see my doctor, and she got me in for a colonoscopy, which was clear of all the more sort of sinister connotations. And they still haven't completely figured it out. And it's stress. that's what it was. I've been taking a sleeping tablet every night because my mind is so active. I don't recommend any of these things, by the way. And you may have seen, I wasn't quite sure whether to say something like this, but because when you and I don't really talk about, people on my mastermind probably don't know me very well. They just see the business side of me. But I was so stressed by this, I had to go and see I went to see a therapist, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'd highly recommend it. I really would highly recommend it. So when the opportunity to exit presents itself, like it did, like this particular individual coming along and expressing an interest in a deal, and life's too short. Life is way too short to get so hung up on business success and money. So for the last 5 years, I've helped other people buy businesses. This has kind of been like what they call a side hustle these days. What did we used to call it? We used to call it like your I don't know what we used to call it, but like your part-time, what you do your fun business. So I've helped other people buy businesses. I've recorded a podcast as regular as clockwork. I think only once was I late. 190 episodes of the Business Buying Strategies podcast. If you haven't subscribed to that, get a subscription to that. 3 books published during the last 5 years, 130 YouTube videos. Not subscribed to the YouTube channel, go watch that. I'll be doing a lot more videos from September. I tell you what I'll be doing from September. I'm going to be visiting my clients who've been on my programs, my educational programs, going to their offices, their factories, wherever they have their business, and filming them and getting them to talk about the acquisitions and walk us around them. So a real day in the life, but not a day in my life, a day in their life. Subscribe to the channel to get a notification about that. We're filming the first one beginning of September with Nick Manuel. I don't know, Nick, if you're on it today. 12,650 people have attended my live training online and offline in the last 5 years, which is quite phenomenal. And I'm reviving this fast track program for people who want to do a fast primer in business buying. It's only £299 plus the VAT. So I'll tell you about that after the main content, if you want to stay on and hear about that. So here are the 10 things that I've learned. So I've given you the life lessons as promised. Here are the business lessons as promised. The first is we created crazy deal flow, like the craziest deal flow you can ever possibly imagine. It was just phenomenal. And at the beginning, I was dealing with it, and then it was just too much. And then Maria in the deal maker's office, she did just so much. Thank you, Maria, if you're on the webinar today. And she would talk to the business owners, and it was like she'd be talking to one business owner, and another one would be phoning, and then the third one would be emailing. It would just be absolutely crazy. We couldn't even begin to cope with it, and in some ways, it was too much. We had the choice of just so many. I think we generated like, well, it's at least 500. I haven't counted, but I've got a suspicion that it's way more, like maybe even a couple of hundred more than 500. But we cast the net wide. Many new deal makers, so many people who come on my courses and are new to this, they want to find a business within 3 minutes from their house. They say, well, the business isn't just down my street, I'm not interested. Or if the business isn't exactly 1.5 million in revenue, making 300,000 EBITDA, then I'm not interested. They create these criteria that are so tight, it's just impossible to find enough businesses to find the deals. Now, there is a downside to casting wide. So the majority of my businesses in the group were at least a 3-hour drive from my house. And there is a downside to that, in that you can't get in the car and go and talk to someone. So if there's a challenging situation where I think all I have to do is go and have a cup of tea with everyone, give everyone a hug, it's all going to be okay. I couldn't do that. It had to be planned. I couldn't do it easily. Where if they'd been half an hour down the road, well, I'll be with you in 30 minutes. See you for lunch. So that's the downside to going outside of your area. And 80% of the deals were generated by letters. Now, those of you who've been on my fast track before or mastermind, you know that letters are the key. So these are letters that we send to business owners to find out whether they want to sell. And I've got a really, really good template. I'm very pleased to say that the majority of my clients use this template rather than creating their own. Some people do create their own, and then they realize that it's easier just to come back to the template and use the template. You tweak the template, obviously, you put your own name at the bottom, for example, don't use my name. I don't think I need to mention that, but you know what I mean. And we sent thousands of these letters. Generating deal flow is a formula, and it requires consistency. You don't just do it once and then that's it forever. You just got to keep on. You've got to keep on doing it. And momentum is the key to deal flow. So once you start buying businesses, you'll find that other people will come to you telling you they've heard of a business that the seller wants to, the owner wants to sell, or brokers approach you. So we had some great brokers approach us. Are slightly cynical at first, but there are some good guys out there, and they provided us with some deals. And eventually, I'm not sure how well you can see this on your screen, but I put it all together into an infographic to stick up on the wall. So this is I just printed this out and stuck it to some board. So you've got there, and these are the 20 steps. The 20 steps to follow to make letters work. So it's a constant reminder, just because it's such an important part of the business. So creating deal flow is absolutely essential. If you don't have lots of businesses to buy, you don't have the ability to negotiate, because you can't walk away. You don't have choice. You don't have a sense of comparison. How do you know if a business is a good business unless you can compare it to 5 others? But if you looked at 5 businesses and compare it to another 5 others, then you start to say, well, that's the great one, that's the not so great one. If you're just looking at one business to buy, you haven't got any sense of comparison. So, and also you haven't got the confidence to be able to say thank you, but no thank you, and walk away to the next one. Okay. So we had the confidence to walk away because our deal flow was just so crazy. Now, here is a really big tip. When you need to raise money, let me read that properly. Why you need to raise money even when you don't need it. So that's the headline. This is all new content, which is why I'm a little unsure of some of the slides. Why you need to raise money even when you don't need it. So why do you need to raise money even when you don't need it? I tell you why. Because when you need money, it's always too late, too hard to raise it, or it takes too long to raise it. Yeah, gone are the days where you can get a business loan in days by phoning up your bank manager and saying, "Can you sort out a loan for me by the end of the week?" You used to be able to do that, and my amazing bank manager Tony, who got me started in the 90s, who very sadly died last year. was wonderful at sorting out things like that. It's now quite unusual. It can take months to raise money and find the right lender, the lender who doesn't want PGs against it, who's happy to take the business as collateral and so forth. So even if you, and I was having this conversation in a WhatsApp group with some of my clients the other day, if you don't think you need money right now, okay, because you just don't think you need it. There's no reason to. But no, go and raise it anyway. You can sit in the bank doing nothing, but raise it anyway, because the moment you need it, it's going to be too late. And the moment you have a profitable business, borrow against it. So the moment you've got a profitable business, go to your bank as the starting point, because they know you already. You don't have to stick with your bank. There's so many different lenders there out there now. Say, look, I've got this profitable business. Here are the accounts. You've got the banking, so you know what happens. What can I borrow against this? Do it. Do it now. It's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. Now, if you're a business buying beginner, make your first deal cash free. In other words, don't risk any of your savings and buy a profitable business. Now, is it possible to buy a profitable business without putting your own money in? Yes, of course it is. I mean, we've got Phil, sorry, Phil, to use you as a great example, but you are a great example. Phil, who'd never bought a business before, beginning of January, set this mission for the year. About 6 weeks ago, I think, or maybe 2 months ago now, completed on his first deal, 7 million of revenue, 1 million of profit, and he bought it without putting any of his own cash in. He used what's called invoice discounting to do that. So he borrowed against the outstanding debtor book of the business to fund the initial payment for the business, agreed to pay the balance out of cash flow, and also he's got a business with hard assets that he's able to refinance. So buy a profitable, but this business is making £1 million profit a year. So buy a profitable business as your first deal, and then leverage against that to buy business number 2. So you've got your profitable business, you own that. What can you borrow against that business in order to buy business number 2? In other words, you're using other people's money to build your empire, which is good. Doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank. Yeah, if you can do it this way, why don't you just keep your money in the bank? Now, if you have no money in the bank, you've got to do it this way. And I don't think that business buying should be just for wealthy people. Business buying can be for anyone. It doesn't matter how much money. I don't care how much money you've got. If you've got the determination and you're prepared to learn the skills, then you can do it. So why is buying a profitable business cheaper than buying a distressed one? Think about that. Why is buying a profitable business cheaper than buying a distressed one? Everyone thinks that the distressed one's the cheapest, but let me explain why. Everyone wants to do a £1 deal. But if you've been on my training, you know, because you paid to be on the training, that I talk about £1 deals for about 2 minutes during the course of a 12-month program, because it's not the focus. It's not the focus. And there are people who think that's all I talk about. It's not. It's like nothing. My business is, my courses are not about buying businesses for £1. I mean, you'd like to know how to do that, of course, teach you how to do it, but that's not what it's all about, because they're not often the best deals. A £1 deal is a distressed deal. So you're only paying £1 for the business, but you're going to pay in time, effort, work, and you might well have to put money in later. So it comes at a price. It is better to buy a profitable business, leveraging against the assets, the fixed assets, the debtor book, the cash that the business already owns, so you're not using your own money. That is a far better strategy than doing the £1 distress deal. Now, having said that, if you already own a business, it might be a very nice bolt-on that you can do if you've already got an infrastructure to plug that business into. And then the first business that you buy becomes the platform investment to buy business number 2. And then business number 3, number 4, and number 5. And remember, turnarounds take longer than you think they will. A turnaround, so buying a distressed business, making it profitable, would take longer than you think it will. And I bought lots of turnarounds in the last 3 years, and the ones that are the most successful are the ones we bought right at the start because we've had them the longest. They've bedded in the longest. So it takes time to turn these businesses around. So number 4, the most important person in the company. Who is the most important person in the company? You might think it's you. It's not. It is your finance director. That is the most important person in your company. So start looking now, because good ones are hard to find. So you've got to start interviewing. It doesn't cost you anything. Well, it costs you a little bit to run an advert, I suppose, but run the advert on Indeed, Total Jobs, one of these online platforms, cost you, like £30 or something, and start interviewing people and telling them what you're doing and say, look, we've got one business, we want to grow it to 6 businesses, and interview. They are hard to find. Expect that person to command the highest salary in the business. Now, I've had a little bit of misfortune, I suppose, with finance directors over the last few years. 4 finance directors in total, and the most recent one was the best one. And it's nothing to do with salary. I paid £130,000 salary to a finance director, and he was probably the worst, to be fair. And so the salary does not necessarily mean that you get a great person, but expect to pay good money to find good people. And here's a big tip: hire that finance director when you are too small to need them. Even if you think, look, they're only doing like 2.5 days work a week and I'm paying them a full-time salary, I'm kind of wasting half the salary. No, you've got a great person who knows the business from the ground up on day one. And that's very, very important. You need to be due diligence ready every day of the week. You don't know when someone's going to come knocking on the door saying, I'm interested in your business. You don't know when it's going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen. So you don't know when it's going to happen. And you can do this. You need to start this process now. Due diligence, by the way, is the checking process that a buyer will do on you as the seller in order to know what it is that they're buying. Your financials must be impeccable. And I mean impeccable to the penny. Your finance director must know everything about that business, because due diligence is an incredibly painful process where every question that's asked and every answer that you give will just give another 6 questions. And then you give the answer to those 6 questions, and there's another 6 questions. So you need someone who can do this. Selling a business is very, very stressful. And you need someone who can take the stress on the finance, because so much of it is going to be about finances. And you will also be able to raise money easier and exit at a higher value if you've got a great FD in place. So don't begrudge spending 50, 60, 75,000 pounds, 80,000 pounds on an FD. You think you can't afford it? Well, believe me, not having that person, you definitely will suffer financially. Like massive tip for you all there. Number 5 is how to create a management team and when you should start recruiting. Now, the management team are going to run the business for you so that you don't have to. And I've made some mistakes around this over the last few years. And let me tell you what they are in a moment. The first thing to remember is do the opposite of what most small business owners do. Hire people better than you. Most small business owners want to be the cleverest person in the meeting and know everything about the business and know better than everyone else and know the ins and outs of how they make the product or deliver the service. And they know the ins and outs of the customers and the contracts and the suppliers. Look, hire people who are better than you, who will do the job better than you can do it. You might believe that's not possible. You might think no one can do it better than you. You are wrong. Plenty of people can do it better than you. So you need to become what we call the conductor of the business, the conductor of the orchestra, rather than the person who tings the triangle. You know, the person who tings the triangle, and you think, what's the point? What's the purpose of that person? Why are they doing something so that doesn't seem to contribute to the orchestra? Well, you need to be the conductor, not the person running around tinging the triangle, emptying the bins, getting annoyed that the photocopiers run out of paper. Don't sweat the small stuff, all right? You need to be the conductor of the orchestra. And delegate out to your team. I've got a great acronym for you in a moment's time on that. And you need to create what-if scenarios. Sit down with your team and say, okay, so what if there was a fire? Who would you notify? What if someone quits and they lock you out of their emails? What happens then? So you create all these what-if scenarios. And the solution to each what-if scenario needs to be dealt with by one of your team, not by you. If you become the font of all knowledge, if you become the go-to person in every emergency situation, what will happen is that your business will create so many emergency situations, you won't be able to sleep at night. And this is a mistake that I made. I didn't get a management team in place early enough because we didn't need it. And it was during a pandemic when the last thing anyone was going to be doing is coming to sit in an office together. That's the opposite of what everyone was doing. I should have had that management team because so many things came to me. So many things landed on my plate. And I did my very best to fend them off, but it didn't work all the time. So you need to be the chairperson and the investor in the business, not the manager. Do not be the manager. Let other people manage. You be the chairperson and the investor. Otherwise, you'll be DOA. Now, what does DOA mean? Now, I had a client years ago who told me about this. He said, Jonathan, I had a heart attack at my desk. Someone came into the office and found me very quickly on the floor, ambulance, taken to hospital, and obviously recovered. However, I realized that I could be DOA. And if you watch Crime Scene, CSI Miami, then you'll know that that stands for dead on arrival. And no one wants to be dead on arrival. You don't want to have a heart attack at your desk. I mean, what a terrible way to go. So DOA actually stands for, in our world of business buying, delegate, outsource, and automate. Write that down. Delegate, outsource, and automate. Delegate, outsource, and automate. So everything in your business needs to be delegated, needs to be outsourced, needs to be automated. And when you delegate, you outsource, and you automate, then you relieve the pressure, particularly the pressure on you. How do you know when you need to exit your business? How do you know when you need to exit your business? Well, you're probably expecting me to say when the numbers are on an upward curve and you know that you've got that lovely upward curve on the numbers, so you can get the very best value, and you've left a little bit in there for the new owners to grow the business as well. That's all correct. There's nothing wrong with any of that. That's really good advice. However, I think it should be when you stop enjoying it. You know the time is right to get out when you stop enjoying it, and when it keeps you awake at night, and when you can't switch off, and when your physical and mental health suffers. That is when you should be exiting your business. That is when you should be doing it. Mental health is more important than physical wealth. There you go. There's my saying of the day. Mental health is more important than physical wealth. And I've always considered myself a very robust person. I can take a mental beating, but at some point you've got to say, look, enough is enough. I need to place myself above the business, and that is when it's time to exit. Now, getting back onto the technical stuff, why your acquisitions should be a mix of share and asset purchases. So anyone who's been on the fast track knows that the difference between share purchases and asset purchase, the plus and minuses, the pros and cons of doing a share purchase, the pros and cons of doing an asset purchase. So you know those differences, okay? However, there should be a mix. And out of the 48 deals that I've done recently, only 6 were share purchases. And you do asset purchases because they typically are faster, they're simpler, they're lower professional fee deals, and there's less risk on an asset purchase. You can sleep better at night. But I've got a new rule that I'm developing now, which is going to be the new rule of thumb going forward. When there is incomplete financial information on the business that you're looking to buy, or the business is stressed in some way, then do an asset purchase. So you buy the assets, not the shares. You buy what you want and leave behind what you don't want. Now, when you have confidence in the numbers and the business is clearly profitable, do a share deal. So that's the new rule of thumb with assets versus shares. Now, when you do the share deal on this clearly profitable business, you can use that credit history of the company to fund the next deal. So you can use this momentum investing. So you can use that business to fund the acquisition of the next acquisition of the one after that. And I know I've got masterminders doing exactly that right now. So when you're buying a business, you'll discover, those of you who've been on the training already, you know that it's not all about the money when you buy. But it's also not about the money when you sell. In fact, if you think about it, it's got to work. It's got to work both ways. So sellers of businesses rate things as more important than money. For example, retirement, freedom, health, which is why if you're new to the world of business buying, you don't need a lot of money to buy a business. Because everyone thinks they watch Dragon's Den or Shark Tank or one of these shows, and they think it's all about the money. They think it's all about the money. All the seller wants is maximum value, maximum value. And they may start off like that, but then they start placing other things as more important in that hierarchy of requirements. I want to retire. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to get the best price and wait 5 years to get it. I'd rather get a lower price and get out now. Or freedom. Freedom's the big one. And health, clearly health. So you don't need a lot of money to get into business buying. In fact, you can buy your first business without putting any cash in if you structure it the way I teach. And money means nothing if you aren't fit to enjoy it. Interesting exercise that I've done with some masterminders in the past is actually work out how much money you truly need. And everyone thinks they need 50 million, 100 million. Everyone needs that. Everyone thinks they need that. You don't need as much money as you think. So in actual fact, was this exit, the one I've just done, the biggest number that I could hope for? Well, I had some pretty big goals, some really big goals, but it would have taken several more years to get there. So the exit number wasn't the number that I set out to achieve 3 years ago, but my priorities changed. It wasn't all about the money anymore. It was always about those other things that are just so important. Cash flow is as important as profit. So everyone talks about profit. They say, what's the profit of the business? What's the profit? And we all do that, don't we? We're looking at a business to buy and we want to find out what profit it's making. I want you to think slightly differently about this. I want you to think, what's the cash flow of the business? It doesn't matter how much profit you make if cash flow is bad. And in some of the business that I bought, the cash flow was terrible. There was no credit control. Customers paid whenever they felt like it. Some customers didn't pay for like 3 months, and then they said they couldn't pay. It was just so messy. So sorting out the cash flow and making sure that the money comes in before the expenses is really important. And to be fair, Brexit, pandemic, and now this cost of living crisis have hit a lot of businesses. Our utility bills were just going through the roof. Now, your FD, that finance director, that most important person in your business that you're going to start recruiting like today, should be running cash flow forecasts, not just a profit and loss. So they should be doing cash flow forecasts to show you what money's coming in and what's due to go out each month. Over a longer period as possible. It becomes less accurate the further into the future that it goes, but definitely over the next 90 days. Because the business's health can change within weeks. You can have a very, very healthy business today. You can do a cash flow forecast, and then you say, well, actually, in 3 weeks' time, we've got a cash flow crunch we didn't even know it was coming. Yeah, the profit's there on your management accounts, but it isn't there in the cash flow. So make sure that your FD is on top of that. And then set goals so they don't kill you. Look, you know the BHAG? Have you heard of BHAG? B-H-A-G, big, hairy, audacious goals. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Have those big, hairy, audacious goals to set. You know, those goals that stretch you, those goals that get you excited. I'm all for that. Absolutely. I've always been big into goal setting. You know, I remember writing down goals like, I remember my top 10 goals. One of the things I really, really wanted was a fax machine. That shows how far back that goes. I really wanted that fax machine. That was like a goal of mine, and a mobile phone. That was it, a fax machine and a mobile phone. But you need to set goals so they don't kill you. Everyone wants to be number one. And I was even talking to a client on the course the other day, and he said, I want to be number one in the sector. Look, I'm all for number one. I'm all for number one. But do you really need to be number one? Why don't you just be satisfied with a smaller, more profitable business empire than aiming for number one and having that stress of trying to get to number one, and de-risk as you go along. So if you're able to take money out of the business, pay out dividends, maybe even sell a slice of the business in order to release some capital for yourself, do it as you go along. You probably don't need as much money as you think. Everyone thinks they need 100 million. Yeah, that's the new goal everyone sets these days. 100 million, 50 million, 20 million. You might only need 5 million. 5 million could set you up for a very, very long time. So in the business that I've just exited, there was at least another 2 years of work for me to maximize that value. But I was happy to exit earlier and not have that 2 years of work. And you might say, oh, Jonathan, just do what you're saying, delegate out, get the team in. Well, I'm kind of the sort of person who gets a bit obsessed with something? And would I be able to sit at home and let other people do everything and not, it makes me itchy. But it was no longer something that I wanted to do. I would rather have the family time, rather have all that than maximizing, squeezing out an extra pound out of the deal, squeezing that out over the next 2 years. Yeah. So I'd rather be well off and healthy than stinking rich and dead. You know what? That's not a bad way to live, right? Well off and healthy, because we need money to live. We need money to be able to make choices. Nothing wrong with that. I'm very happy to be well off and healthy, rather than stinking rich. Yeah, the yacht in the Caribbean, and dead a short while after because of the stress. So making business your obsession is absolutely not right. It has been mine since I was 19 years old. I'm 50 now. It's been mine since I was 19. It has been my obsession. It's not right. I can tell you it's not right. But you can still acquire businesses and keep a good work-life balance. So you can still do a work-life balance. Yeah, I know that from not doing it, and at times doing it. And I haven't always been completely obsessed, but